Okay, I'm going to use an example from my life right now of how God is working sanctification through me. And it is me standing up here and giving a sermon to a room full of people on Mother's Day. By sharing this example, I hope to illustrate that this calling to sanctification can be very simple in what it looks like in everyday life, like today. It's been a real struggle for me this week to be able to be here today and speak to you all, but I truly believe that God called me to do so. My husband Peter told me a few weeks ago that traditionally this church has women preach on Mother's Day. And he also told me that he was looking for a few different women to fill that role. So I didn't think anything about it. But last Sunday evening, so a week ago today, we found out that the woman who was lined up to preach couldn't do it anymore. Immediately, I felt God tugging on my heart. I found myself asking my husband if he'd like me to preach for Mother's Day. As soon as I said it, I regretted it. I changed my mind. I waffled back and forth, and I felt myself battling. I was struggling with myself. I was battling with God. I was not happy. In my life, this is often what I've experienced when God is calling me to do something bigger than myself, something outside my comfort zone, something in which I need to fully rely on Him in order to accomplish. And preaching is one of those things for me. I'm always trying to find a way out of it. I don't know if you can relate to that. I want to do it feel safe. I want to do it feels comfortable. I want to curl up in a ball and say, I can't do that. I also find excuses to justify why maybe I shouldn't be doing this. That it couldn't have been God that told me to preach today. So this time around, my excuses sound a little bit like this, and see if it sounds familiar. God doesn't want me to preach. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a pastor. I get nervous in front of large groups. What if my voice shakes? What if I cry? This isn't my area of expertise. What if people judge me? What if I mess up? What if people come to church and are disappointed that it's me preaching today? What if people shut down and don't want to hear God's voice through me? And most of all, why would I give a sermon about mothering when I am not a mother? This is not typically one of my favorite days of the year. I've learned to cope with it, and I've done a lot of healing around some tragedies in our life, like infertility and miscarriage. But I surely don't feel like giving a sermon on this particular Sunday. But here I am. I even heard myself bargaining with God and my husband. I think I made this week a little miserable for him, too. I was telling him, I'll preach on a different Sunday. I have other topics I can talk about. There's other things that I'm good at, and I'll just do that later. And all the while I was bargaining, I knew deep down that God wanted me to speak today, and that He was going to use it to bless me, to hopefully bless you all, and for sure to bring Him glory. I wasn't sure how, but that is the beauty of this. I don't have to have it all figured out, because that is God's job. He will bless me, He will bless you all, and He will be glorified. But not because of what I do, but because He is glorious. And all I have to do is obey and join Him in this and be ready to be blessed. How amazing is that? Kind of, but it's still really terrifying too. Okay, so let's take this knowledge of sanctification, even this kind of simple example in my life, and let's apply it to the mothering context, because we are here on Mother's Day. Mothering doesn't often seem like a tragedy. In fact, it's quite the opposite, isn't it? But it sure is a huge life change, way bigger than moving or changing jobs. It's a changing of the course of the rest of your life. As I said before, once you're a mom, you're always a mom. Oftentimes, being a mother is seen as this one person sacrificing themselves for another. It's the mom's job to take care of and love their child so the child may become what God has intended for him or her. A good example of this, I found a story this week, and it goes like this. Years ago, there was a young mother, and she was making her way across the hills of South Wales in England. She was carrying a tiny baby in her arms when she was overtaken by a blinding blizzard. She never reached her destination, and when the blizzard subsided, people went out searching for her body, and they found her beneath a mound of snow. But what they discovered is that before her death, she had taken off all of her clothing, and she had wrapped it around her baby. And when they unwrapped the child, they were astounded to find out that he was alive. She had mounted her body over his and given her life for her child, proving the depths of her love as a mother. Years later, that child, David Lloyd George, which we may or may not have heard of, he became a Prime Minister of Great Britain. And without a doubt, he was one of England's greatest. Wow, that's pretty intense love, isn't it? But I'm sure if I asked any of the mothers here today, they would all agree that they would lay down their lives for the life of their children. It's such a testament to mothers. That's the way that many of us see this relationship between mother and child. The mother gives, loves, teaches, and sacrifices. While this is true, I believe that the role of being a mother has another side, an opposite side. I believe that God calls us into motherhood for something more. He wants us to experience Him giving, loving, teaching, and sacrificing for us. While we're busy raising and taking care of our children, God is raising and taking care of us through this process called mothering. Please don't miss this part of mothering. Mothering is here to make us holy. It is one of God's way of sanctifying us. He uses the heartaches of motherhood to teach us about our own heartaches. He uses the joys of motherhood to teach us about heavenly joys and what it's like to be in His presence. He uses the big events of mothering to draw us near to Him so that He can minister to us. And He uses the mundane, everyday events of motherhood to teach us about quietness, patience, boredom,